Hi, my name is Nolan, and I am doing a mental health awareness campaign for my abnormal psychology class. And for my mental health project, I decided to do a campaign for suicide awareness in transgender people and transgender youth. Um, this is something that matters very much to me as a transgender person. I identify as a transgender man. I use he/him pronouns. I'm 30 years old, and this is something like very important to me because I care very much about my community, and I care very much, especially about the political agenda against my community in recent years and how it has affected our mental health on a mass level. So to get right into it, one thing I want to talk about is the Trevor Project. The Trevor Project has conducted their 2024 U.S. National Survey on the mental health of the LGBTQ people. If anybody wants links to any of the sources I talk about in this, feel free to reach out to me. I'll try and put them in the description of this video. If not, just reach out to me and I will not hesitate to share them. But the Trevor Project is actually pretty easy to find. You just go to trevorproject.org and look for their 2024 survey. So in this survey, 39% of LGBTQ youth seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year, and 46% of that are transgender and non-binary young people. Something important to note is 1 in 10, that's 12% of the LGBTQ community that are young people attempted suicide in the last year. 45% of transgender and non-binary young people have reported that their families have seriously considered relocating due to politics, especially the legislature being passed into law targeting transgender people and families with transgender children. So comparatively, the percentages of attempted suicides based on gender identity, the ones who considered suicide in the past year of cisgender men is 27%, cisgender women are 31%, transgender women are 47%, transgender men 52%, non-binary and genderqueer people 43%, and questioning 42%. Now that's just the considering. The attempts for cisgender men were 7%, cisgender women 8%, transgender women 14%, transgender men 18%, non-binary genderqueer people 13%, and questioning was 11%. And then it's a matter of like, are we able to access the mental health care that we need to? And so this survey speaks for the LGBTQ community as a whole, and like big parts of it do focus on the transgender community, but this one I believe is just generally applied to the LGBT community. The percentage that have a desire for mental health care that were surveyed were 84%, and then the ones that have access to healthcare is 50%. Now, for gender affirming medical care, 13% of transgender and non binary young people reported being on gender affirming hormones, and 2% reported taking puberty blockers. Of those percentages, 61% who had access to gender affirming hormones were very concerned about losing access to that. Now, when we talk about gender affirming care, you get into medical transitions, which is access to hormones, access to puberty blockers, surgeries, and so on. There's a lot of misconceptions about that I typically see online. Is that people think that children's parents are just taking them in to see just any old doctor and get prescribed these hormone treatments, puberty blockers, and that they're giving their kids surgeries and so on and so forth, when that's just not true. There's a standard of care set for the transgender community, especially transgender minors. We have to follow the WPATH guidelines, which if anybody wants a link to that, feel free to reach out to me. I will be happy to send it to you. And then access to these different types of care will vary depending on where you live at. There are certain states right now where transgender minors do not have access to any medical care. And this can be very detrimental to their mental health. So, according to another study, the suicide attempt rate among transgender people ranges from 32 to 50% across countries. And like the reason why the suicide rates are so high within my community, I've seen there be misconceptions about like we're unhappy with our transitions and yada yada. Like it's because we're doing all these things to ourselves and it's having detrimental mental health effects. But that is just not true. The regret rate for medical transition is, I believe, around 1%. And I can have that linked for you as well. It's actually a pretty low regret rate when it comes to stuff like that. Knee surgery has a higher regret rate than medically transitioning. The reason why these attempt rates are so high is because of the bullying, the discrimination, the violence, being rejected by family, friends, people that we thought like loved us unconditionally. There's harassment from complete and total strangers, online and offline. Anybody who keeps up with me and my family here on TikTok, I'm sure you've seen your fair share of how people treat us that don't understand and don't care to understand anything about us outside of the fact that they think we are non-normal and that we do not deserve to live a life of happiness. Now, something that is very important, especially for transgender minors, is parental support. And a lot of the times, kids in my community, and even those of us who are adults now, when we were kids, we didn't get very much family support. I myself did not come out when I was a minor. I did know very early on, but I did not have the words for it. But generally, the studies that we have that look into transgender youth and parental support conclude that strengthening parental support has the potential to improve overall health and well-being of transgender youth. And that's the goal with talking about these kind of things. We want to be able to make sure that we're helping these kids succeed and go on to make it to adulthood, because there are large percentages that either attempt or succeed at not even making it to 18 because they are just so unhappy with the treatment, the backlash, the inner struggle. Struggling with your gender identity is not easy at all. You know, some people just they think that you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I'm not a girl anymore. I'm a boy, and it's just it doesn't work like that. Like for me, like throughout childhood, like there were definitely signs there. Like I preferred like Tonka trucks, GI Joes, and this doesn't make somebody transgender, but there were other signs there, especially when I hit puberty. The discomfort, the dysphoria, and I had no idea how to describe to anybody the distress that I was in, and it was very, very intense. I experienced depression at a very young age because of my body changes and being unable to identify exactly what was going on. So with all that, I'll tell y'all a little bit more about myself. I already introduced myself as Nolan. My preferred pronouns are he/him, and I am a transgender man. I came out when I was shortly after I turned 19, and that experience for me was very difficult, and it put a strain on my relationship with my biological family. And for years, it's been an up and down struggle. I'm happy to say that I have reconnected with my mother, and that's gone way different than it ever has in the past. And I'm sure she'll tell anybody, that things are completely different between us than they were 11 years ago. It was very, very difficult, and like for me, from my experience, it affected my mental health greatly. I had two attempts that year that I came out, and after the second one, I ended up relocating states completely, just because I felt like if I didn't get out of that Southern Bible Belt, very discriminatory area, because it's not very accepting of people like me or people in the LGBT community in general, I felt like I wasn't going to make it out alive. And like my experience throughout my transition, as far as like my mental health has went, um, as far as like society goes and like how people treat me once they know I'm transgender, it goes a lot better than it used to. But I think as society has progressed, we've opened our minds a bit more, and there's more inclusive language being taught. We have a very diverse community with access to the internet, and we are able to hear people's stories and experiences and what that was like for them, and hopefully for the most part people are able to empathize when they hear about our struggles and why we struggled with that. And then like my mental health with my medical transition has like I genuinely rarely experience gender dysphoria anymore. I first started hormone replacement treatment, testosterone, in 2015, and we're now in 2024. So I'm almost a decade in with my hormone treatment, and that it's been fantastic, phenomenal. That alone and what it has done for my mental health has been fantastic. And then July of 2023, I had a double mastectomy. That was the biggest thing for me after hormones. This was something where there were a lot of days I could not get out of bed in the morning, just because I knew I had to put my binder on and I couldn't go anywhere without it. Sure, maybe, like, yeah, you can go somewhere without your binder, but mentally I could not. The thought of it made me sick, and for the most part I would walk around my house with my binder on all day, every day, and that's not healthy for you physically, but like mentally I could not go without it. And then I was hoping to have a couple of more people do interview for my project, but unfortunately that did not happen the way that it planned out. So my partner Dominic did allow me to request his assistance, so I'll be throwing in his story in this.
Hello, my name is Dominic. My pronouns are he, they, and I identify as trans masc or genderqueer, technically a part of the non-binary umbrella. So I came out at 12. I wasn't going to come out yet because I wasn't ready, and I knew that, not everyone was ready for that, but my mom caught me binding with ace bandages, and I was backed into a wall about explaining myself and what was going on there. There was not a lot of parental support. There was actually quite a bit of pushback in trying to say that it was just a phase or that it was an issue of questioning sexuality. My sisters were very supportive though, and I had some friends who knew. I came out officially in school when I was 16. Classmates were kind of hit or miss on who was okay with it and who wasn't. Adults definitely treated it like it was some childish phase though, and there wasn't a lot of support, but I did have some teachers that were really, really awesome who were there for me with that. So the way that my gender identity has affected me throughout my life, being very young when I came out, being a trans kid was really hard because there is a lot of bullying and there's a lot of negative self-feelings that come along with that. So it was a pretty early start with my depression and my anxiety about being around people in general, because I am AFAB and trans masc presenting. and I don't really pass. So there is a lot of judgment and just negative energy about it. I think even worse than that would be when I was pregnant, because I did carry my own kid. During pregnancy, a lot of people have so much to say on being queer, being a trans man, and carrying your own kid. I definitely sank into a pretty bad depression, and again with anxiety, I did not want to go out of the house because I was masculine presenting while extremely pregnant. So, pretty big effect on my mental health, I would say.
Now, for anyone who knows somebody who is transgender, or if you are a person who is transgender and you are struggling, there are lines out there that you can reach out to. Trans Lifeline is a free one, and they're staffed by transgender people as well. There is a United States line, 1-877-565-8860, and a Canada Lifeline, 1-877-330-6366. And they also have a directory of other hotlines and warm lines. And then, as always, one of my favorite resources is the Trevor Project, which I referenced at the beginning of this video with the National Transgender Survey. They have a 24/7 toll-free confidential suicide hotline, 1-866-488-7386, or you can text START to 678-678. You can also chat with them online. That's another thing that I like. Some people don't do too well with, like, phone calls and stuff, so I like the messaging and the text options. There's also the LGBT National Help Center, 1-888-843-4564, and they offer peer counseling information and other resources. And then there's a crisis text line, 741-741 from anywhere in the United States to text with a trained crisis counselor. Something that's important to remember is that you're not alone. There are many of us that are going through a pretty unified, terrifying timeline right now, especially with current political agendas. So it's important, if you do have a support system, you do have people to lean on, that you reach out to them and you talk to them. Or you can reach out to these crisis lines, because there will always be somebody there for you if you need somebody to just listen. And if there's one thing we can cling on to, it is that there is hope. Things may seem bleak, or heavy, but there is always a future. And while it may take some hard work to get there, we can get there. It is completely possible. We just have to continue doing what we do and proving that we have just as much of a right to exist as everybody else.